All right, we are live. All right, guys. Well, today, oh, shit. So today we're going to take a little dive into who are the they, who are the elites, who are these people that everyone talks about as being the string pullers in this marionette we call life. You'll hear a lot of folks talk about how you know, you have elites, you have people who are behind the curtain pulling the strings, you have people of wealth who spend their money and spend their time influencing policy and legislation of the globe, as well as social constructs and social norms. So today we're gonna kind of start getting into this and figuring it out. Now, I've kind of come to a conclusion while going through this stuff is what fucking cat. We're gonna have some visitors probably. So what I figured out through all this is that realistically, all of these different groups, right? You have Skull and Crossbones, you have Bohemian Grove, you have Illuminati, you have Freemasons, and you have the Knights Templar, and you have far more. And, I used to know so much more about all this stuff, and then I had to take a break for a long time. And through that break, I let a lot of stuff go. I did not find a need to remember all this stuff just because I wanted to get away from it. But here we are back at it again. So, first, so all these groups, okay, let's kind of go through that. So, all of these groups that we talk about, that we hear about, from Davos, Bilderberg, Bohemian Grove, Illuminati, Freemasons, Skull and Crossbones, or Skull and Bones, uh, what I've determined is that they're all factions, okay? And I think this is kind of where a lot of people get lost in the sauce. Is especially if you've been listening to guys like Alex Jones, George Norrie, Art Bell, over all the years, what you'll find is that it seems like you have all these groups, they're fighting for the top, okay? They want to say, oh, like let's take Alex Jones's Bohemian Grove video, right? Which everything about it was right. Okay, he did find him. He caught them with their pants down. He caught them in their rituals. There is shit going on. And I think the general public at this point can say, without a doubt, yes, there is shit going on. However, what I think gets confused and lost in the sauce and all this is that we all kind of were under this presumption that they were all a part of the same group. The Skull and Bones guys were a part of the Illuminati and so on. And from my research, from what I've kind of dug up, it does not seem that way. It does not seem as though it is one large group that's broken down into smaller groups. What I've kind of come up with is that they're all essentially gangs, right? And what do gangs do? Well, gangs fight over resource and territory, okay, for their region. Okay? Like, for instance, the Crips and Bloods, okay? The Crips and Bloods stay within their regions. They fight for control over their territories, but they stay within the same general region. You don't have the same gang wars that you do down in Compton as you do, like, say, in San Francisco, San Jose, uh, Reno, let's say Utah, Des Moines, Iowa. You don't see it there. You see it only pretty much uh, relegated to their own territories. So, as we go through this, what you should be thinking of is what territory are they trying to control? What territory uh, are they really going for right now? So, um, here in a second, just let me do some stuff real quick. Do, do, do. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. All right. Now we're back. Okay. So, first I want to do is this. I need to put a post up on Twitter that we are live. All right. So, first one we're going to bring up is Skull and Bones. Okay. So, we can easily find a Wikipedia and a Britannica definition. Okay. Now, the Skull and Bones was actually created out of Yale University. So, what's interesting about Skull and Bones is that you have a lot of uh, really high up people. This is primarily a United States group, if not solely United States. So what it is that you have these group of guys. They went to Yale. You have Alfonso Taft and William Russell, and okay, they are the co-founders of the Order of the Skull and Bones, which was the original group. So when you're looking at these guys, you see a lot of kind of backstory, and the backstory is cute. The backstory kind of gives you a uh, more tamed down version of their background. So what most people don't know is right in here, or at least they haven't gone and done extensive research in this. Um, it says here the group Skull and Bones is featured in books, movies, and let me bring this up. Okay. Books and movies, which claims that the society plays in global conspiracy for world control, which they don't. I would venture to say that yes, all these groups are connected to the larger group of the Illuminati. However, I do not think that uh, primarily their goal of the Skull and Bones is for for global control. Um, what they are though is I think the Skull and Bones is more or less trying to have control of America, not North America like Mexico, Canada, and the United States. They're primarily in with the United States, and they're trying to get in Mexico and Canada. Okay, so they can have a North American world order essentially. What they used to call it was NAFTA, which was the North American Free Trade Agreement, and then you had they had they wanted to create the Amero, which was just a conglomeration of the Mexican currency, the Canadian currency, and the United States currency. So when you start seeing all this, yes, do they play in the larger scheme of things? Does the Skull and Bone Society work for and to the Illuminati? Yes. However, is the Skull and Bone Society focused on what's happening in Europe right now? Not really. I mean, they are. So this is where they play hand in hand, okay? So what I would say is that at this point, who works close with these guys is these guys, the Freemasons. Okay. Now, the Freemasons is a very interesting group of folks, and they were primarily a kind of distilled version of a society that came out of Europe, out of the British Empire. And so, what's really interesting about the Freemasons is how long they've been around, and then they essentially have this overt view of themselves, okay, as to what they want people to see. Now, you will have um, a whole other side to this faction, which is the side that I don't think. Uh, well, I know some folks, like Alex Jones, has dug into this. And a few other really notable folks have dug into this. However, the average person does not dig into this information. Now, my grandfather was a Freemason, okay? And uh, I have to get it from my father, but he has my grandfather's Freemason Bible, okay? Now, from what I've always understood from it, and I haven't had a chance to actually put my eyes on it, so I need to get that copy from my father. But what I was told through it is that it's essentially a mirror of the Holy Bible as we know it. However, there are changes within that Bible that is more of, let's say, a corrected version, right? So let's go with this. So, for instance, we have our Bibles. If you're a Christian, you're Baptist. If you're in the Christian denomination, you know what your Bible is. Okay. Well, the Freemasons use a very similar version of that Bible, but from what I understand is that when you get up into the higher orders, the higher degrees, 33 and up, and they say that the degree orders end at 33, I believe, and they do not. So, when you get above a certain degree within the society, so you got to think of degrees like levels, right? So I'm trying to level up. I pass this level. Okay, I know the shit. They're going to move me up to the next level. And higher you go, the more select the information is, as well as the exposure to people get limited because now you're starting to refine yourself into this upper tier individual within the group. So we'll go over their kind of overt side. Okay, so the overt side of the Freemason group is, they say, is the teaching and practices of fraternal order of free and accepted Masons, which it's a men's only group. Okay, largest worldwide secret society. Okay, an oath-bound society often devoted to fellowship, moral discipline, and mutual assistance that conceals at least some of its rituals, customs, and activities from the public. Okay? So that doesn't make people think right there, hey, there's something funny going on. Um, the fact is that you can find documentaries that show lower level rituals. Yes, you can. They're also kind of bizarre in how they operate. However, what you will never see on YouTube, on the internet, you might be able to find it in the dark web, and maybe we'll take a journey down the dark web and see what goes on. But the reality is that you're not going to see a higher level ritual because the stark difference in that what happens is that it is believed that Freemasons, their Bible, okay, actually is a Bible that instead of glorifying God, it was rewritten from the version of the wicked ones. Okay, so let's say, Satan. Okay, it was from that side of the aisle. And essentially, it's saying that God does not rule the world, God is not an omnipotent being, uh, Jesus was heresy, kind of thing. And they start building it. And when you get up into the high end orders of this society, it does become very satanic. You know, much how Bohemian Grove is. Bohemian Grove is actually a very satanic ritual and meeting uh, of these very wealthy folks, of these very uh, powerful, wealthy, as well as kind of they're in the shadows. Okay, a lot of the folks that you will see attend Bohemian Grove, some of them, like in Alex Jones's video, okay, you were able to spot out some folks that people knew. Okay, high, high level officials, whatever. But within Freemasonry, you're not going to know who's at the top. These people are very secretive. They are very behind the shadows. Uh, they do not attach their name to very many things. Okay. So when we say who are the elites, okay, well, the elites, the people pulling the strings, are not the people like, for instance, Klaus Schwab at the WEF. It's not the skull and bones and the bushes, right? It's not, we can go down all these deep dives. But who the elites are, okay, is that these are extremely powerful individuals who have never had their name shown to light. And if they have, it's so convoluted that you won't be able to find any information. Like, for instance, I suspect the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers are some of what we call the elites, okay? And here's my theory behind it is that they've spent all these years, the last century at least, making an image of these families, okay? Now keep in mind with these families, a lot of people hear it on the face and say, "Oh yeah, no, they have a lot of money. That family's been around a long time." But what they don't think is that these are the same families through every war that the globe has had. Okay, um, I would say from the 1700s, maybe even 1600s, potentially even earlier. Okay, but I would say definitely 1700s, and these are these are the families that they have so much wealth they can control governments. I was reading this story. I forget who it was. Was it Rothschild? Back when Rothschild got started, he was a banker, and what he did basically was that he shorted the economy, and the there were a few governments, larger governments, who actually needed to take loans from him in order to make their debts or take care of whatever other expenses that government had, right? Well, what that did effectively is that allowed him to, let's look it up. I think it's Rothschild. Okay. Okay, so 1700s is when they got going. Yeah, so it's banking dynasties. And that's something that most people, I don't think, really give much credence to. So, if we know money rules the world, money establishes power, money establishes status, we can all agree with that. Okay, so who are going to be the most likely culprits to pull the strings of the globe? Okay. Well, it's going to be it's got to be someone out of the banking cartel. It's got to be someone out of the banking dynasties because the banksters, right? The banking folks, They're the ones that control the money, and whoever owns the largest bank and owns that much power through that money, I mean, they can buy entire governments. If they can buy entire governments, then how are we not looking at these guys as being the top? I mean, is there someone that potentially could have more money than the Rothschild family or the Rockefeller family? Potentially. You know, there's always that potential. However, let's just kind of follow the money and kind of look at how it goes, right? So let's just look at their name, Mayer Amschel Rothschild. Okay, Meyer's family name derived from the red wrought shield of the house in the ghetto in which his ancestors had once lived, intended for the rabbinate. What is that? Let's look that up. Oh, for the rabbi. Okay, so he was Jewish. Oh, well, that adds to the whole Jewish dynamic. Meyer studied briefly, but his parents' early death forced him into an apprenticeship in a banking house. Okay, so that's how I don't know how his parents died, when they died in his childhood, but we can see that those events got him into the banking industry. Soon after becoming court factor to William the Ninth, Landgrave of Hesse-Kassel, Mayer set the pattern that his family was to follow so successfully. Okay, so essentially, Meyer Rothschild was the first one. His family was poor before, but after him, he was the one that got everything going for them. Uh, so successfully to do business with reigning houses by preference and to father as many sons as possible who could take care of the family's many business affairs abroad. So he had actually a pretty good plan. He knew what he was doing. He got into business, and what a lot of people don't get, and this is what I kind of laugh about, right? Is so we had let's for a moment, okay, break this down into what that just said. It said to do business with reigning houses by preference, okay? When I read that, that sounds like different factions. It sounds like different families who have power and control in the region, okay? And, that region's quite large for this particular era. Now, when I hear business with reigning houses, what that's telling me is that, okay, so Rothschild is now established. He is the court factor for William the Ninth, Landgrave of Hesse-Kassel. So that started his status and his prominence. Then now he knows that he has to compete with other families who have money and status, who also have control, okay, of that region. And then follow it up by uh, he wanted to father as many sons as possible to take care of the family affairs, business affairs abroad. Okay. Well, what did that just do? That just increased his territory. Okay. Rothschilds have a stake in America. They have a stake in Europe. They have a stake in Asia. They have a stake in pretty much every main faction of the world. Okay. So then, if we continue reading this, we're going to get into his five sons. So his five sons are what really started getting everything going. And his five sons are what really, I would say, solidified the family's name in status and power. So it says starting off as dealers in luxury items and traders in coins and commercial papers, Meyer and his sons eventually became bankers to whom the French Revolutionary and the Napoleonic Wars came as a piece of great good fortune. And the reason why is because they had enough money, they ended up needing to fund France to fight the war. So his eldest son, Amschel, supervised the growth of the business from Frankfurt. So that was in Germany, while Nathan established a branch in London. Jacob settled in Paris, and Solomon and Carl opened offices in Vienna and Naples. So right there you have Italy, Germany, Europe, okay, England, and Italy. And this was all by the 1820s. Okay, so the wars for the Rothschilds meant loans to warring princes. So what they did was, uh, and they were smuggling legal trade products. So in a time when they would have sanctions, right? So you guys are familiar with how the United States is sanctioning Russia right now, preventing them from having money, oil, resources, whatever. Okay, well, it was the same thing back then. Whoever was fighting would put a sanction on the other country. Okay, saying, well, you can't have wheat, you can't have cotton, you can't have produce, you can't have weapons, you can't have anything, and you won't be able to spend your fucking money. Okay. That's how the sanctions work. Well, they did this back then, and what the Rothschilds did is that they were actually pretty smart. And as evil as this is, it's very ingenious if you ask me. But what they were doing was that I believe that they were the first family to really start loaning money to both sides of a war. Okay. So you would have France and then the Prussians, right? Well, the French were fighting the Prussians. That was the Napoleonic Wars, right? Well, what the Rothschilds did was that they funded the French, okay, loaned them a bunch of money, got them trade, got them goods, okay, low key, and then they would go over to the Prussians, and do the same thing. Say, hey, the French have you sanctioned. You guys need wheat. You guys need cotton. You guys need coal. You guys need weapons. And you guys need people to do business with. And we're just the people to do it. And so that kind of started their real dynastic uh, control. Is they figured out, well, if they loan money to both sides, no matter what, whoever loses, it doesn't matter because there's still going to be a winner, and that winner is going to take the spoils of war and they will be repaid. Ingenious. Evil, but ingenious. Okay? So as we continue with Meyer, is we see peace transform the growing Rothschilds business. The banking group continued its international business dealings, but became more and more an agent in government securities, okay, in insurance company stocks and in shares of industrial companies. So then what they started doing was that because war is not happening all the time, okay, so in times when there is no war, they are buying insurance companies, they're buying industrial companies, they're buying government securities. Basically, they are buying into the government to own ownership of the government. They are owning insurance companies, or at least parts of it. They're owning other industrial corporations, industrial companies, and this is back in the 1820s. So we're talking the start of the Industrial Revolution, where coal, the railroad, ironworking, metallurgy, everything was kind of coming together. We were starting to see genuine growth as a society, as a people, okay? So when we weren't in war and they weren't funding wars, they were funding the backbone of the Industrial Revolution, essentially. Which this, all it did was take their existing status from funding the wars and being a part of the French government, okay, all the way to now they've solidified their status, their money, by owning into so many of these different aspects of the Industrial Revolution, including the governments. So then, uh, the banking group continued to expand into the 1850s and achieved an important position in the world when it comes to non ferrous metals, so like copper and brass, and oil. Okay? Oligopolistic position. Wow. So I'm just reading, sorry. By the last quarter of the 19th century, it was no longer the first banking consortium. Other groups in Europe and in the United States became stronger, richer, and more enterprising. So, right there, for a better part of 100 years, the Rothschilds were the name in the game when it came to money. They were the name in the game when it came to money, when it came to industry, when it came to government investments. They were the people essentially for about 100 years that controlled the majority of the money, okay, in the globe. So that kind of just gives you an initial background into who these guys are, how did this family start, and what how did they kind of start getting down their path of control. So, yeah, see, then it ends. Second Baron Rothschild. Lionel Rothschild. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. So, what you'll find is that the family itself has had a long and deep history with money, government development, empire development, in industry development. So, how can we not look at these guys as potentially being one of the figureheads of the elite? Okay? I believe Alex is right in this. I believe that the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers are at the top. And I would even say probably the Windsors. Okay? That would be like Queen Elizabeth. Rest in peace. She just died. But her whole family and what came before her. You know, the Windsors are probably one of the most powerful overt families in the world and have been probably one of the longest reigns. I mean, you have the Henrys, okay? King Henry the eighth used to, like, whack his wives' heads off and shit, which, I'm sure there were reasons. Everyone wants to say, oh, don't blame women, but, let's be honest here. Women do a lot of dumb shit, but so do guys. I mean, I've done my share of dumb shit. So now, moving over, so we've looked at the Rothschilds family, okay? And we looked at Skull and Bones. With Skull and Bones, you had like the Bushes, I believe the Kennedys were in. There's actually quite a few notable families who were leaders of the United States that were a part of Skull and Crossbones. Or Skull and Bones. I always say Skull and Crossbones, but it's Skull and Bones. So then let's take a look at the Bohemian Grove. Okay, so the Bohemian Grove is kind of like a symposium, right? It's where all these guys get together, the most powerful people in the world. Okay, whenever period of time that is. But it's a place in the middle. It's essentially Redwood City, California. They say it's Monterey, California. And no, it's Redwood City. It's north of San Francisco. It's in the old ancient redwoods. And they have a group there. And this group, it's a private group. It's a gentleman's club. And it is an encampment of some of the most prominent men in the world, per Wikipedia here. So it's basically made of government officials, business leaders, presidents, basically anyone who has uh, any real status and power is there. Okay. So, well, apparently you can book that place for private days nowadays. So, They say it's only been around for 40 years. I think it's been around a bit longer because the 50s, well, let's see here, 40 years from now, that would have been the 80s. So we're really talking, I think, the better part of 100 years. So you would have, so they're talking about the old guard in this paragraph, which were uh, the OG wealthy people, wealthy men of the time who were attending uh, this group, this event, right, yearly. You had like Herbert Hoover was involved. You have, man, there's so many people involved. But essentially, this, see, even Robert Oppenheimer was there. Okay? The heads of Princeton and Yale were there. Heads of Standard Oil and General Electric were there. Okay? Even Nixon was there. Okay? You had all these people, and the whole point of it was that these guys would get together. Okay? And it's from what I understand, it's invite only. Okay? Is what it would be is that these guys would get together and they would practice their debaucherous activities. A lot of them like to cross dress, act like women, be gay, And I'm not saying like gay isn't happy. I'm saying gay like they like to put dicks in each other's asses and suck each other's dicks from time to time. And that was from Nixon. Richard Nixon, when he goes, this is a quote from him, goes, "The Bohemian Grove, which I attend from time to time, is the most faggy goddamn thing you could ever imagine with the San Francisco crowd." So basically, it's it's a time and a place where these folks get together, and this is where shit goes down. This is where I think a lot of people like to kind of, you know, brush it off. Most people, guys, think about this. If you told them about this, the average person, maybe not the one who's a little bit more awake than, recently awake, but if you were to go and you were going to talk to someone, you say, "Hey, have you ever heard of Bohemian Grove?" And chances are the person's going to be like, "No, what is it?" And you say, "Well, it's a place up in Redwood City where some of the most powerful, wealthiest men in the world come to attend once a year." And then you would say, "Really? Well, I wonder what they could be talking about." And, you know, most most folks probably think, "Oh, they're just blowing steam off, they're just hanging out, they're not talking business." That's a lie. This was a group that I believe in its earliest forms is much how the Illuminati operates now, much how the WEF is, right? These guys were getting together and they were talking about what their next moves for society were. They were getting together and saying, "Okay, well, where do we want society in 20 years? What do we want to see come to pass? What do we want to see that is bettering for our families?" So when we like so when we see policy come in, right? Let's take policy that is outside of normal human rights, okay? So when how to put this? Like, it's these groups here between the Freemasons, between Bohemian Grove, and between Bilderberg, and between Davos. Okay? Now, keep in mind, a lot of these groups have the same members. It's not like you go group to group to group and they're all different members. Yeah, you're going to have members who are not all affiliated with the same groups. Sure. But you have a lot of folks in this that are all a part of these groups. You have one guy, he is a part of Bohemian Grove. He is a part of the Freemason. As well, he attends Bilderberg, as well as he attends Davos. Okay, and those are going to be some of the really, really wealthy men. Okay, there's no way they're not talking about how they're going to kill us. They're not. There's no way. Y'all want to say that there's no elites. There's no they. There is. It's these fuckers right here. And we can actually simply prove it this way. Let's go back to this tab. Let's go. Bilderberg Group. Secretive meetings. So established right around the same time as Bohemian Grove. And they say to foster talks between Europe and North America. No. Originally, they say it was to prevent World War. No, it wasn't. This is how they control the free market, Western capitalism, and other interests around the globe. So just like the participants at Bilderberg, right? Or not Bilderberg, at Bohemian Grove, you have the same political leaders, experts, captain of industries, finance, academia. These same people are still attending Bohemian Grove. So you're telling me now that these people who are in the skull, some of them are in the Skull and Bones Society, some of them are Freemasons, but they all attend places like Bilderberg meetings and Bohemian Grove meetings and WEF Davos meetings. Okay? You can't tell me that these groups who have very similar members to them are not the same people who sit up here and control us. Are these not the same people who are pulling the strings of the marionette? Are they not? Sure seems like they are. So when you're looking at let's look at some of the participants. So we saw old participants here, where it talks about some of the old OGs. Okay. But you still have. Okay, and they don't even give us a list. But you have current members here. When they host the Bohemian Grove annual meetup, okay, in mid-July every year. Okay, you're telling me that meetup, and then this meetup, and then let's go crazy, if I can fucking spell, Davos, Switzerland. Okay? Who's coming and everything you need to know. This is where the Greta Thunberg was created. And you guys think that was just random shit? It was not. Thunberg is a very interesting plant. They planted her. They made her. There is no fucking way some little girl in the middle of the fucking Swiss Alps that anyone gives a shit about out of 8 billion fucking people, that people are going to rise up and say, she's right. She's not the only kid who said that shit. She's not the only person to have made the statements that she's made. But why her? And I do genuinely think that it has a lot to do with how they want to push public perception. Okay, that was actual work. So when we're looking at these things, you think the Greta Thunberg is a fucking random chance? You think Tate getting arrested was a random chance? You know why Tate really got arrested? Here's why. Okay. Here's the unpopular take that I think is really going on is yes, the Tates had their cam girl business. We all know that. They've talked about it ad nauseum, right? We know that the Tates have been involved with some very wealthy individuals. I mean, for fuck's sakes, they own some casinos now, right? Well, why do they own casinos? Well, I believe Rolo's onto something with it, and I think that he is more accurate than probably people want to give him credit for. But you own casinos to launder fucking money. You don't own casinos because you want to own a casino in most cases. So if they were arrested, they're trying to say that that they were arrested and charged. They haven't even been charged. They're just detained for sex trafficking, right? Well, let's look at this. Is you know, let's look at like Myron Gaines, right? I don't know his real name, but that's his pseudonym online for Fresh and Fit. I watch those guys. I like to watch Myron's Fedit channel because I like learning and it's interesting to hear the perspective of law enforcement. He's former law enforcement. And considering how much respect that guy had for his job at HSI, okay? He was a Fed, okay? He wasn't just any Fed, he was a good Fed. He did his job well. He's the guy you do not want coming after you, okay? So I have this hard time thinking that all of a sudden you had this, Captain America, good boy, worked for the feds, loved it. That was his career. That was his job. I have a hard time thinking that he is going to have thrown that entire reputation away to get involved with someone that has such uh shit, kind of lost my thought. But basically, how do you really think that Myron would get involved with the Tates if the Tates were doing something overtly shady? Okay. That's not to say that Myron and Fresh and them don't know anything about their money side. And chances are they don't. Chances are the Tates, Andrew and Tristan probably keep that information exceptionally quiet. And I bet you. So, getting back to what I was saying regarding the Tates is that I do think that what's going on with the Tates is that I think that they are going to try and nail them on money laundering. But I think that this is a twofold attack on them. I think that they are going to they've used a sex trafficking, right, as a means to get a hold. They suspect most likely he's involved with some substantial money laundering. And my guess is that he has some ties to some really nefarious people. Okay? And what I think is ultimately the goal in all this is what was the Tates' message for the last year? The Tates have been around a while. I've seen them, for the last few years. And, when they first were kind of coming out, they weren't very big. They weren't very notable, they were still wealthy. They had their money, they were G's in their own right. Okay. But they didn't have the internet footprint and they were able to do what they were able to do without being encumbered because they didn't have the light of the internet on them. Okay. Well, now they have the light of the internet on them and they have been talking counter cultural narrative for the last year. Okay. And what's that? Well, It's believe all women. It's women this, women that. Women are the best, basically. Women can do no wrong. Women are better than men, is essentially what they've done. You know, you want to know how they've conflated society into being what it is today? Society has become a neurotic mess. Okay. And what were the Tates doing? The Tates were telling guys, okay? They weren't telling guys, go be pimps. They weren't telling guys uh to go kill themselves. They weren't telling guys that uh to go and rob the old ladies. They weren't telling the guys to be dishonest in how they made their money and made their fortune. They were just encouraging guys to get off their ass, get shit done. You want to be cool like me, here's how you do it. And not, hey, on a cam girl business, do this, do that. Not do what they did. But they say, look, they even made Hustlers University. And that, I think, made them very, very dangerous. Because what that did is that in a society where Rola's right, we're in the too long didn't read generation. In a society where the attention span is the length of a goldfish, and you're trying to get people's attentions, and you see all these dudes who are dying, right? I mean, figuratively and literally dying as a result of this narrative that these governments have put out that women are all strong, and that's why we have She-Hulk and Wonder Woman. The fact is that these guys have been talking out against what they say is the Matrix. Well, the Matrix, I do get annoyed hearing about this Matrix shit. I've been hearing it for the last 20 years. Okay? Whether it was Alex Jones, Art Bell, I'm sorry, I'm drawing blanks. But basically, I've been hearing this statement of we live in a matrix for at least 20 years. And it used to really annoy me. It annoys me now for a different reason, just because I think now it's a buzzword, it's a buzz term, whereas before it was a genuine analogous to what we were seeing happening. So when I say that who are the puppet masters pulling the strings on the marionettes, it's exactly that. It's who are the in the Matrix, the whole idea is that the real world is out here and they have you plugged in to sedation over here. Okay? Well, what is happening in this globe right now? They are doing what they want over here, okay, while sedating you over here. It's the same thing. Okay? We do live in a matrix to an extent. We do. I mean, there's no way we don't. When you have all these secret societies, you have these secret meetings of 2,500 leaders of business, politics, civil society, media, that all get together. And what they do is that they specifically curate what they want you to see out of it. You know, you see this shit going around where, they have these clips of Klaus Schwab saying, eat the bugs, right? Well, think about that. Everyone wants to make a fucking joke on it. And the fucking sad thing is that I think most people are aware that that is actually coming. But what do? We make a fucking joke out of it. And for what? This is why nothing will change, and this is why these guys will succeed. They will succeed because you, even if you're watching me, if you end up ever getting this far into this episode, where we can talk about Tate, we can talk about Davos, we can talk about the people pulling the strings. If you can get this far into this video, you will actually be fucking smarter. Because then you're going to actually understand the matrix that you live in. And the matrix that you live in is that we are humans. Okay? What is our basic MO as humans? If you take away all these modern evolutions of work, money, uh, credit, debt, all this shit away, okay? Take it all away. What are humans' basic function? We we work, whether it's to build our home, build our farm, build our community, okay? But if you look around, our communities are failing. Our people are falling. Our houses are in disrepair. And why is that? You know, the birth rates are gone down, marriages have gone down, and why is that? It's because the original MO of human beings was to be on this earth, was to build for the next generation. Uh, you know, fuck as much as you could, have as many kids as you could, teach them as much as you absolutely could. Get out of the way and die. Then the next generation takes on. That's the very basis. So now we live in a generation now, in a society where you and I have to go to work every day. And if you're fortunate enough to be paid in a surplus where most of your money does not go to bills, does not go to just pure survival and existence, then you're doing good. You're fortunate. And keep doing it. We need more of that. But the fact is that most people go to work to make money, to pay bills, pay off debts, buy food, and just survive. You know, the youngest generation right now, the ones that are turning 18, I don't know how they're going to buy homes in the next 10 years. I have no fucking clue. I mean, think about it. The average home price is 400,000, 300,000, and that's on the low end. Now you have a 6% interest rate, okay? Well, right there you need like $2,500, $2,700 just to pay that mortgage, and that doesn't get you a luxurious home by any means. But yet, let's think about that, okay? Well, $2,500, you know, if you're making $22 an hour, that barely pays your mortgage. Okay? But yet we want to say that these people that are pulling the strings are trying to help us. No. Andrew Tate was right, dude. If no one pulled at the most important thing that that guy said, and I believe this entirely in my heart, he said that the times that we are coming into are the have-yots and have-nots. And I know that he was being facetious when he said it, and I know that it was done in a joking way. But think about that. You got a guy who was sitting in a room talking on the internet, right? Andrew Tate. I mean, if the guy even has $50 million, he is within an elite group of people. Okay? Like what was interesting is that, you know, they were talking. I forget if it was the first time he was on Fresh and Fit or the second. But it was when he was buying his Bugatti, right? And it was very interesting what he said is that he was talking about buying the car. And what he said that I don't think a lot of people took away from it was he didn't buy the car because he wanted the car, guys. He bought the car because that car was his admission ticket into groups of people that the only way you can get in is by showing off a certain level of status and power. Okay? Those same people that he was getting into by buying that car are very likely the same people that are pulling the strings on the marionette of the globe. Guarantee it. The amount of wealth that the Tates were getting into was incredible. And so when you hear a guy like him talk about that, it really does beg to question, how much does this guy actually know? And how much is he telling folks? I mean, I'm not saying that Andrew Tate necessarily has every secret in the book and that he knows exactly what's coming. But what I'm saying is that he surrounds himself with enough people uh, of wealth and power, of extreme wealth and power. They talk. And I'm sure he's heard things. So now we can look at the WEF, okay? And it was funded, or it was founded in 71 by Klaus Schwab, okay? And Klaus Schwab, I don't think he himself, okay, was any particular scholar or notable individual that had a lot of money, okay? I think he was an individual that had his own viewpoints, okay? And some of them were probably really extreme, but he knew that he also could not come forward with those extreme views because most people would just think he's fucking crazy. And he is. But what he started doing was he started networking and talking to people, okay? Started getting all these individuals together and started making it, essentially he was copying a blueprint from Bohemian Grove. Okay, because you got to remember, this is only 15, 20 years after Bohemian Grove was founded. Okay, and Bilderberg was founded. So now you have Klaus Schwab, who, for all we know, okay, he was an economist. So it is possible that he attended Bohemian Grove or Bilderberg meetings. We don't know. But he started networking and he started getting specific people to get engaged with his group. And so then this group is formed. Okay, so they're saying that it's a group of businesses, political, academic, and other leaders of society to shape global, regional, and industry agendas. So right there, they're telling you that they want to be a figurehead in speaking on the part of how we live as a globe, regionally what they're going to do, and how industries of the world are going to move forward. Okay. So when we talk about who are the they, who are the elves, okay? I've shown you. It took me an hour and 4 minutes to show you who these elves are. Because if you want to say that on a lower level of society role that the elves don't exist, they do. We do live in the Matrix, but we live in the Matrix in a whole other paradigm than what most people are even imagining the paradigm is. I'd like to dedicate this part specifically to John Fitch and Rollo Tomasi, because what what we gotta tell guys, what I think it's important to tell guys is that the info war is real. The war for the mind is real. And what do you think the issue with men is anymore? It's an issue of the mind. We are all dealing with issues of the mind, okay? So when I say issues of the mind, well, let's look at it. You're looking at emasculated men, defective women, going around. You know, men have been emasculated. Well, how do you emasculate them? Well, you emasculate them by removing them from the top of the food chain. You put the most capable, independent group at the very bottom. You make them fight up. That's what happens. And then you put the weakest group, which in this case, in realistically as we speak here, is women. They are the vulnerable sex. Rollo, you are right. But now let's put them on top. They are the head of where this goes. What they do, how they do it, everything about womankind, is the correct path. That's what they're telling us. That's what the WEF is telling us. That's what Bohemian Grove folks have been saying. I mean, fuck, they've been cross-dressing, Rollo, for years, for decades. Because they want to impose what they want for themselves onto the globe. In some cases. And in others, they just want to impose control. What do you think eating the bugs is? You know, we had the Georgia Guidestones. They were recently destroyed, but they were put up in the 70s, about the same time Klaus Schwab started the World Economic Forum. And one of the first things on it was that the globe shall maintain a perpetuity of population at 500 million people or less. Well, how do you do it? Okay, well, I'm sorry. It's not hard to say that birth control is, a conspiracy theory, that it was part of putting the man at the bottom. You can't say that they said, like, let's look at fluoride, right? Well, fluoride was just a way for industry to get rid of a toxic product but get paid for it. They didn't want to pay to dispose of it. They wanted to be paid for it. Or that's just how it ended up. Basically, they wanted to get rid of it for free and ended up getting paid for it. Okay? Well, what has fluoride done to this country, Rollo? John, I'm sure you know. Fluoride is in all the SSRIs. Fluoride's in the water. Especially California. Rollo, you're lucky because thankfully we have natural fluoride in our water. And, our water supply is not tainted by our local leaders. However, John, yours is. And what's it doing? It's scrambling people's brains. It's shutting off the critical thinking aspect for these men. So now you have all these men who used to be strong, capable, and otherwise at the very bottom because now they're dumb, stupid, and fat. Okay? You want to talk sedation. I agree with your whole sedation argument. I do. And it's really a shame. But it's not just that guys are sedating themselves, because they are. But even when they stop sedating themselves, they still have government officials who think that they are better than them, trying to control them through fluoridation. Trying to control them through, let's take birth control, right? Well, birth control, we know that estrogen, the hormone, gets found in the water supply as a byproduct of the females who take birth control, urinating, and the urine goes into either the ground supply through, your septic system, or it goes back into the main water supply if you live in a metro. And unfortunately, estrogen, being a hormone, cannot be filtered out. Therefore, they knew that that was going to be a byproduct. Just as they tested, they might have done false tests, but they knew. They still did testing, and whether they released the proper information or not, they knew the right information, which was they knew as a byproduct of all these women, especially as the population of women grow, which means that the supply of birth control has to grow to meet the demands of the women. Okay. Well, now all these women are taking it, and they know that the byproduct of estrogen gets into the water supply and that it cannot be removed. Therefore, it is permanently in the water supply. Now, let's recycle that water supply. Okay. Now that strength only increases. Well, they know about this. Okay. So how do you take the strongest group, put them at the bottom, and take the weakest group, put them on the top? That's what we are the marionette. Society is the marionette. This is exactly what they wanted. They want the strong at the bottom. They want the weak at the top. Why do you think transgenderism is the number one thing? Hell, transgenderism almost tops women's rights as a whole. Why? Well, they know that the transgender folks are the most confused, dumb individuals out there, and that they're so effed up on all these drugs, the SSRIs and other poisons that they're putting into their fucking body, that they can control them. They are the weakest group right now, and they are at the top. We can't say anything. If we have any criticism towards it, if we think it's wrong, we think it's abnormal, we think it's, fucking with the human genome kind of thing. Okay? We can't speak out. We can't have an opinion. You know what's really fucking funny is that we want to talk about how there are no they, Rolo. Did you know I found it was an HR bill submitted to the House that is trying to ban animal human chimeras? Why do we have a fucking bill that's being introduced like that? It's because people are fucked up. People are sick. So the people at the top of the they group, okay? You have to remember, most of them, when it comes time to sift all the chaff out, half of these people, the economists, the lower end business leaders, the lower end political people, the celebrities, they go away. They're being told that they have a spot at the top, but I guarantee you they don't. So when it comes down to all this, and we're looking at who the fuck the they are, well, the they are people like Klaus Schwab. It's like, let's go through the fucking list here. It's Klaus Schwab. It's the Davos people. It's the Bilderberg people. Okay? I mean, fuck, look at Bilderberg. Heads of state, including former King Juan Carlos I of Spain, Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands. You have royalty coming in from around the world, and you're telling me that they don't exist. These are the they. The ultimate they, though, the ultimate they, I believe, are these guys. They're one of them. I think ultimately the they are the competing families that have the most power, the most wealth in the globe. And they've had it for hundreds of years. So just as your argument, Rolo, with Genghis Khan being, one of the longest lineages of the world, okay? Well, the same goes for the bankers. The same goes for the ultra wealthy. It's kind of like when we would always hear how uh, the royal bloodlines wouldn't allow just anyone to just get willy nilly married in the family. They had to pick who they got married to. This is why they had arranged marriages. It was because they needed to keep the bloodline diluted enough, but well within. That way they knew that this was actually a part of the family. So it would not shock me a bit to know that the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Windsors, and I am sure there are more. Let's just do a quick Google search here. Wealthiest families on earth. Wealthiest family. Okay. So the Waltons, which is Walmart. Okay. But these are all newer. Okay, this is newer money. Because there's no way that the Rothschild family is this low on a fucking list. Oldest money families. Okay. We might be able to find something here. Like Warren, but okay. Yeah. So the Astors, okay? Like these guys. We're going to dig into these. Like DuPont. Yeah, DuPont created DuPont Chemicals. That's how long they've been around. They originally come from France. Where do the Astors come from? Germany and England, okay? Related to other prominent families like the Livingstons, the Roosevelts, the Dudleys, the Winthrops, and the Bayards. Okay. The Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and the Vanderbilts. I always forget about the Vanderbilts. So, I would venture to say that these five families right here, okay, I would venture to say that these five families here are a part of the World Economic Forum, are a part of Bilderberg, are a part of Davos. They may not be a part of Bohemian Grove. Some of the men might be, but you know, when we're talking money, y'all fucking think Bill Gates is rich. Bill Gates is like kind of rich compared to these families. These families have so much money. This is what I'm saying is that there are families that don't get talked about. If you think the Astors still don't have their wealth, you're crazy. Okay? I mean, you're nuts. You're nuts to think like DuPont is not around. We only hear about the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds because they're the most prominent out there. They're doing the most moving and the shaking. So I want to kind of wrap this up and say that the way everything is done is that you have groups, whether it's the Freemasons, whether it's the Bohemian Grove people, whether it's the Skull and Bones, whether it's the Gideons, the WEF folks, the Davos folks, the Bilderberg folks, whoever the group is, you got to treat them like a gang. Okay? They are they're not all operating under the same MOs as all the others. They all each have their kind of niche into what they're looking for. Skull and Bones is more of the collegiate control, trying to get control of political power in the United States, because the United States, for the longest time, was the most powerful country since its inception. But when you realize that ultimately they all have the same goal, which is they all want control, then it's just a matter of us as a people figuring out a way to remake the society that we are in. And I think genuinely that, crypto is kind of that way. Crypto seems to be the start of that answer. And what we're going to find most likely is that, just as with everything that is independent, that is free, that can actually lead society to proceed forward on a healthy path, on the correct path, there's always a government that gets involved, some sort of group, and it gets co opted. And when it gets co opted, it loses all teeth, it loses all steam, it loses all meaning and power and substance. So maybe one day, as a people, we can all eventually agree to do away with all these folks, to render them effectively obsolete. How we do that, I don't know. But are there people that are controlling what we see, what we do, how we behave, how we act, how we judge, how we make our decisions, all the way down to what we eat, what we drink, what we put in our bodies for medicine, or what we don't, for that matter? We are all controlled. The elite is real. The elves are real. They may not be in the form with which you were expecting, but what we can determine is that no matter what, there is a war for our mind. There's a war for our thoughts. There's a war for our bodies. The fact that it's a conversation that we're going to try and take brain dead women and use them as surrogates as basically birthing bodies is unreal to me. I mean, don't get me wrong. On my practical side of my brain, I'm like, okay, I get it. But on the moral and human side of my brain, Just doesn't feel that way. It's not something that seems right. But here we are. They've shaped our reality. All they had to do was put it out, make it sound like it's a good idea. You know? I mean, for fuck's sakes, look at the whole Sam Smith thing. Okay? That guy looks truly evil. If he's not evil, then he is just depraved on a level that I don't think we've understood yet. And they parade him around as if he is what we need to be. He is what our children should aspire to be. So if you think that the depravity, the immoral, the lost boy, if you think that that wasn't programmed into you, just as it was to kill the nuclear family, well, I'm not saying that initially when these things first came up that initially they weren't a more organic path, like I'd love to say that about birth control, but let's look at Margaret Sanger. Let's look at her history. Let's look at her history with Bill Gates' father and how she was the pioneer of eugenics. I'd love to say that there was not a nefarious aspect to that and that it was purely to help women. But it wasn't. That is a specific, laid out, factual, documented fact that birth control, Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, it's all connected. And if the people at the top of the government really thought that this was so wrong and so immoral and that these are things that shouldn't happen, then they would have stopped it. But they didn't. They didn't stop any of it. Matter of fact, they subsidized it. What's that tell you? That tells me they're behind it. Tells me that they wanted to see the destruction of the nuclear family. And why was that? Well, let's go back to what all this was about. Money and power and status. Right? If that's what men are looking for, if you have MLD John saying it's about money, muscles, game, frame, okay, take the game out, take the frame out. Money and muscles, which muscles provides you status, money provides you status. Okay? It establishes a pecking order. Okay? So everything comes down to money and status. Okay? Well, the birth control didn't. It affected the status from the sense that the status of most men are not nearly what they were as their grandfathers and their great grandfathers were, because there was an actual need of purpose for them and not for the current generation. But what they said now is that, okay, well, we're going to take away women's accountability to the subject. We're going to introduce this, which what that does is now it provides women with this idea that they don't need a man, which sure, fine, okay. Start giving them jobs, hell, start giving them credit cards. Well, what did that do? That brought them into the money supply. Because previous to all that, they were not in the money supply. They were not counted in the money supply as they are today. They were not an individual number. They were a part of the husband originally. Yes, they might have spent the money, but the husband made the money because they were stay-at-home wives or mothers. Whoever they were, right? Well, now they don't have to stay at home. They can go out and work, which now what we've done is that these folks have, out of greed, have convinced these women that they need to work as an identity. as an identifier for themselves. And that's what I have a problem with. If a woman wants to work, fine. I don't give a shit. Okay? I legitimately don't care. Okay? But my problem is that most women anymore have now made their job, made their money an identifier, which was a masculine way of operating. Okay? So, you put the men on the bottom, you put the women on the top, just by taking their accountability away for the reproduction. Because when you did that, you had to give them a credit card. You had to let them go make their own money and be independent. You had to. There was no way that you were going to do that and still make them to keep them dependent on the male. That just wasn't going to work. That was going to implode. But you had to give them these things, and so now that they've given them the credit card, they've given them the right to vote, they've given them a job, they've given them money. Well, now they pay more tax. That's more tax to the government. That's more interest rate to the credit card companies. It's more revenue for all the different corporations like Target, Ulta, Walmart. All they've done is effectively separated the female as an income generator now and have doubled their taxes. So, if you guys want to convince me that women's rights was for the benefit of women, that's cool. You guys can try. But what I see is that men and women had a dynamic that worked. It's the best operation of its variation for thousands of years. And now they come in and fuck it up. And they didn't fuck it up because they say, hey, this isn't working. They came and fucked it up because they said, oh, we want more money. We want more power. How do we do that? And just by making those little decisions, started creating all these other downstream effects like estrogen in the water supply. Something we cannot remove. It is permanently in there. Okay, so if you want to actually help the environment, I would say the number one thing that you can do to help the environment, help the people of this earth, help the quality of life go up, remove the fluoride and remove the birth control. And now I'm not saying remove the birth control, ladies, to shit on you. I'm not. I'm saying it's just a natural standard deviation of, as a result of you taking birth control, you shed hormones from your body, which then goes into the public water supply, which our animals are drinking it, and it's bad for our animals. It's bad for men to drink it and overconsume it. Just like with fluoride. You want to see men come back? Take that shit out of the water. I've always said, I had a dog that got breast cancer about 8-9 years ago. And I was buying that dog the best dog food I could buy. The healthiest, cleanest, food I can give her. But the only thing I didn't do was I did not give her filtered water. I gave her tap water. And I believe, just as we are, 78% water, what's in the water matters. What's in the water can make and break us as humans. So, I'll leave you with that thought today. Rolo, if you ever get to see this, I hope you give me a response, dude. I actually really love your work. I think as a statistician, as a guy who has sat down and broken the numbers down, I think you have hit the nail on the head in so many on so many topics that it's hard for people to refute. However, we still we still have yet to actually ask, because you know what I find fascinating is that, you have guys like you and Rhinestone who, Gatsad, David Buss, they all follow the evolutionary side, but what they all ignore is, what about these additions to our food supply, our water supply? What effects do they have on the human body? And since we talk about the male space, what effects do these toxins have on the male body? How did we come to be in the position we are in? Yes, I understand that you talk from a perspective of here and now. This is where we're at. These are the numbers, and this is what we got to do. But I would be very interested to hear someone such as yourself actually look at the history and say, you always say connect the dots. Well, I connect the dots back here. And to me, by the toxins that they put in the water, the uh, the byproduct of birth control from women shedding it and it being in the water supply, to GMO foods, unnatural foods. It's kind of like how Ryan says, we were built for carbs, but that was because in the early days we needed the sugar and it was hard to come by. And that's why we like it. It's a boost of energy and calorie. Whereas now we OD on it. Well, if I can get you guys to look at how this all came to be, because I guarantee you, in the 1800s, men were still men. We were also still peasants and serfs, but we were still men. We were still strong. We were still the hierarchy, the tip of the spear, so to speak. And I don't know about you, but it seems like this all started about the mid 40s into the 50s, to fluoridating the water, to removing conscious thought, to then we're going to give, you have to think about this, Rolo. They had to remove some sort of conscious thought from the men who were actually making the rules at the time, to allow such an invention such as birth control that that they had done studies on. They tested the urine. If they didn't, they were stupid. They were scientists. Trust the science, but yet the science gets twisted, and we're still supposed to believe it. So I would love to see guys like you, Ryan Stone, even maybe Rich Cooper would be interesting to see his opinion on. I love Mike's opinion, Mike Sartain's opinion about all these toxins in the water supply and how all these problems kind of started promulgating around the late 40s, early 50s. I'd love to see that. So, if you guys ever get a chance to watch this, I'd love your feedback. But these are just my takes, and we just did some quick Google searching. It's not hard to find this information, and it's not hard to connect the dots. Do I believe that there are families that are richer than the DuPonts and the Vanderbilts and the Aston, so on? Yeah. Have we ever heard their names? Probably not. And are they the ones that are actually doing the tip of that spear? Potentially. But we as humans, we as society are being controlled. Think of Edward Bernays. He created propaganda, gave it the title, and then taught governments how to use it. Okay? So if that can happen, and they can do all that at the same time, which was actually very good timing, however, Bernays, came into the realm with fluoride, and who knows what else he touched. But I think now we can all see that there are people at the top and they are trying to control us. And the best that we can do for ourselves is to be able to address this, recognize this, and live our own lives. You know, MGTOW is right in a general life sense. If you take the male and female dynamic away from MGTOW and you know, it's just men going their own way, well, that's essentially what we need to do in the face of all of this. So, I'm going to leave you guys with that thought today. I got to really fucking pee right now. Maybe I'll hop on a little later and we'll kind of go into this a little deeper. But I think I'm going to do some men's topics next and kind of see what reactions we get. I'm just fucking around with shit. We're going to talk about anything and everything. I don't give a fuck. I don't. So till next time, I'm signing off. You guys have a great day, and I will catch you later. Toodles.